Once upon a time, in the busy streets of Port Harcourt, there was a young woman named Blessing. She was just 22 years old, but life had already taught her pain, hunger and silence. Her akara stand stood near the Rumokoro bus stop, under the broken shade of a red umbrella tied with old nylon and rope. Each morning, before the cock crowed, she would wake up in her small room, sweep the floor, say a quiet prayer, and come out to start her fire. She lived in a single-room zinc house that leaked when it rained and roasted her like firewood when the sun was high. Her mattress sat directly on the floor. No fan, no window net, no electricity, just a small table, a water keg, and her frying pan hanging by the nail. But that frying pan, it was her survival. She used it every day to fry akara, those small golden balls of beans that smelled so good they could call someone from 100 feet. And even though she had little, she had something people rarely carried these days: a kind heart. Blessing didn't have parents. They died when she was just 10, in an accident, one from heartbreak. Since then, she had lived with her aunts in my one, but the woman treated her like a housemaid, not a child. When Blessing turned 17, she left and started fending for herself. Her first customer that morning was always the same. A woman selling corn nearby would shout, "Blessing, I believe the oil is hot today. Oh, yesterday's akara was shivering." And Blessing, with a small smile, would reply, "Auntie Sisi, today's one is bold and brave. Try it." They would laugh. Even though she was poor, she gave people laughter. That morning, as she stirred her beans in the big plastic bowl, she hummed a slow tune, something her mother used to sing before bathing her with rainwater during hard times. Her finger moved quickly, mixing pepper, onions and salt. Then she scooped her first handful of butter and dropped it into the hot oil. The sizzling sound was like music. Shh! People began to gather, as usual. Students rushing to school, conductors waiting for passengers, mechanics wiping their hands. They all knew her spot, they all knew her smile, and they all knew that her akara, though small, tasted like peace. But just as the clock ticked towards 7 a.m., she looked to her right and saw him. He was always there, the blind man. He sat quietly on a low stool near the rusted fence by the bus stop. He wore a long brown kaftan that had seen better days. A walking stick rested on his knee. His eyes were open, but they stared into nothing, white and empty like clouds. His name was Baba Caro, or at least that's what they called him. Nobody knew where he came from. Some said he used to be a teacher. Some said he was once rich. Others said he had gone mad after losing his wife and children. But nobody really cared to ask. People just whispered. Now that blind man where they always sit down there, make we pass so. Blessing, however, saw something different in him. He never begged, not once. He never stretched his arms or disturbed anyone. He just sat, facing the same direction every day, as if he was waiting for something or someone. And every single morning, after selling to her first few customers, Blessing would scoop 2 hot akara, wrap them in paper, and walk over to him. "Good morning, Baba Caro," she would say gently, and he would reply with a nod. "Good morning, my daughter. Your spirit is gentle." That morning, it was the same. Blessing walked up to him, the hot akara wrapped in old newspaper. "Here, Baba," she said, placing the food in his palm. He paused for a second, then smiled faintly. "Your kindness will never be forgotten," he said. Blessing just smiled and walked back to her stand. She didn't do it for praise. She didn't even think it was a big deal. To her, it was just right, but others noticed. A man standing nearby muttered, "Instead, may she chop the akara herself. Wetin concern her with blind man?" Another woman said loudly, "These small girls, they do charity now. Hope say no be the man they do jazz." Blessing heard them, but she didn't reply. She had learned something from life, that sometimes the most beautiful hearts are the quiet ones. Later that day, the sky began to darken. Rain threatened from afar. Blessing quickly packed her bowl, closed her umbrella and folded her bench. She had just sewed enough to buy another measure of beans for tomorrow. Her slippers was worn out. Her wrapper had small oil stains, but her spirit was light. As she walked home that evening, she passed an elderly woman struggling with a bag of cassava. Blessing didn't hesitate. She dropped her things and helped the woman carry it. When they reached the woman's gate, she said, "God bless you, my daughter." And Blessing smiled again. She didn't have anything, but she gave what she could, her strength, her food, her heart. That night in her room, she counted her profit, 3,150. It was enough for beans, pepper, oil, and transport. She lit her small kerosene lantern and warmed leftover rice. As she ate, she thought about Baba Caro again, how he always smiled when he tasted her akara, how his voice sounded like a whisper from long ago. She sighed, "God, I don't have much, but make me useful. Even if na one soul I go touch, make it count." Then she lay on her mat and drifted to sleep, with the sound of buses still ringing in her dreams. The next morning was different. The air felt strange, heavy. As Blessing opened her door and stepped outside with her basin, she noticed something. The street was quieter than usual. When she reached her spot and started setting her things, she looked to the right, but Baba Caro was not there. She paused. Maybe he was late, she thought. She lit her stove and started mixing her beans. Looked up again and still there was no sign of him. She asked the back man nearby, "Bros, you see Baba Caro this morning?" The man shook his head. "That one? I never see him this morning, no, since yesterday." Her heart began to beat fast. She asked another woman. It was the same response. By 8 a.m., customers had come and gone, but the blind man's spot remained empty. Blessing felt something twist inside her chest. Where could he have gone? Did something happen? Did he fall into trouble? Her akara started burning and smoke rose from the pan, but she didn't notice. She was staring at the rusted fence, at the spot where he always sat. The spot now felt like a grave. Her neighbor, Oma, had to call her attention to the akara that was burning. "Blessing, your akara dey burn. Where your mind dey?" "Thank you, Oma. Sorry, I was carried away." The sun was up. Children were running to school with their bags bouncing on their backs. Buses roared. Conductors shouted destinations. Traders opened their stores, but one thing was still missing: Baba Caro. Blessing stood beside her akara pan, watching the empty space beside the rusted fence. The space where his low stool used to be. Now it was just there, cold, bare, and lonely. She had already asked 4 different people: the pure water boys, a cobbler, the maize seller, and even a beggar nearby. Nobody had seen him. Maybe he went somewhere else, someone said. Blessing shook her head. No, Baba Caro never misses a day. Even when it rains, he comes. Another woman said, "You two dey carry this matter for head. The man blind. Maybe in waka go enter another street." Blessing didn't argue. She just turned away. But in her heart, she felt it. Something was wrong. The day went by, but it felt like something heavy sat on her chest. She made her usual selves, but the joy was gone. Even her jokes didn't come out right. When someone said, "Today akara dey hot too," she just nodded. That night, back in her room, she didn't sleep. She lay on her mat, her eyes open, staring at the ceiling. No fan, no breeze, just the sound of crickets outside, but her mind was loud. Where is he? Did he fall? Did someone harm him? Did he die? She sat up quickly. "No," she whispered. "God, please, keep him safe. Let him be fine." She didn't know why she cared so much. She didn't even know anything about him. Not where he lived, not what he did before, not even if Carlo was truly his name. She just knew that she couldn't rest until she saw him again. The next day, she woke up earlier than usual, 4:30 a.m. She bathed with cold water from her blue bucket, tied her wrapper, grounded the beans, pounded pepper and onions, and carried her basin on her head and left for the bus stop before the sky even changed color. She was the very first trader to arrive. She set up everything, her bench, her umbrella, her stove. Then she stood quietly and waited. But by 7 a.m., no sign of Baba Carlo again. Her chest felt tight. The sound of oil frying did not suit her like before. She took a spoon and stirred the akara with trembling hands. Then a voice behind her said, "Blessing, you no go even greet person this morning." She quickly turned. It was Mama Peace, the food seller who sold rice across the road. "Ah, ma, sorry. Good morning. I just did think." The woman looked at her. "Now about that blind man, Abi." Blessing nodded slowly. "You don't need to carry people matter like that too," Mama Peace said, sitting beside her. "If you don't waka go another area, na in choice. Life no dey wait for anybody." Blessing forced a smile, but deep down her spirit didn't agree. That evening, after packing her things, she did something she had never done before. She decided to search for him. Yes, she didn't know where to start, but she felt something was pulling her. She took off her apron, tied her hair, and held a small sachet of water in her hand. Then she started asking, 1 street, 2 streets, 3 streets. She asked everyone she saw, "Please, I'm looking for a blind old man. He used to sit near the bus stop." Most shook their heads. Some laughed. One man said, "Ah, yes, I know him. I see him last week walking with a small boy." "Where?" Blessing asked quickly. Near Eliozu Junction." She thanked him and ran. Her slippers made loud flapping sounds on the wet ground. At Eliozu, Blessing asked again. Still, no one had answers. By the time she got back to her room, her feet were dirty and her clothes were soaked with sweat. But she didn't care. She sat on the floor and cried. "I just want to know if he's alive," she whispered. The next day, something strange happened. At around 10 a.m., when the sun was burning high and the road was noisy with cars and people, a black car suddenly stopped near her stand. A shiny black Jeep, new model, tinted windows with quiet engine. It looked like something from the movie. Blessing's hands froze over her ball. The door opened and a young man in suit stepped out. He wore dark shades, his shoe was polished and his face was sharp. He walked to her table and spoke calmly. "Good morning. Are you Blessing?" She looked up confused. "Yes, I am." The man nodded. "I have a message for you." He reached into his pocket and brought out a brown envelope. He handed it to her gently. "Read this when you are alone. And please, don't tell anyone," he said. "Wait, sorry, who sent you?" Blessing asked. But the man didn't answer. He simply smiled, nodded, and walked back into the Jeep. The car drove off smoothly and silently. Blessing stood there holding the envelope. Her hands shook. People began to whisper, who be that fine boy? See as him dress. Blessing, na your boyfriend?" She ignored them. Her eyes were on the envelope. She quickly packed her things, told the woman beside her to help her watch her spots, and walked into a small alley behind the stores. Her heart pounded. She opened the brown paper slowly. Inside was a letter, neatly folded. She unfolded it and read, "Come to Royal Crown Hotel, room 406, today by 5 p.m. Don't tell anyone. It's important. From an old friend." She read it again and again. Her lips moved slowly. Royal Crown Hotel. Her hands started shaking. She had heard of the hotel before. It was a very expensive hotel, one of the finest in town. And who was the old friend? She knew only one person who would call himself old. Baba Carlo. Her heart jumped. Was he there? Was he in trouble? Or was something else going on? She looked at the time. It was still 1 p.m. She still had 4 hours. She returned to her stand, but her hands were not steady anymore. She dropped salt twice, and then she poured too much water into the beans. Everything was off. Customers complained. This one no be your normal Caro. She apologized, but her mind was somewhere else. Her heart was running ahead of her body. At exactly 4 p.m., she packed her things, locked them in the neighbor's shed, and ran home. Bathed quickly, wore her only good gown, a yellow dress with small flower prints. She braided her hair, took one last look in the mirror, and whispered, "God, please, let it not be bad news." By 4:30 p.m., she was standing at the gate of the Royal Crown Hotel. Her hands were sweating. The security man stopped her. "Yes, who are you looking for?" She showed him the letter. He read it and nodded slowly. "Okay, room 406. Take the lift to the 4th floor." The lift? Blessing had never entered one in her life, but she did. As the doors closed and the numbers blinked above her, she held her bag tightly. Her feet felt weak. Her chest beat like drum. When the door opened, she stepped into a clean hallway with thick carpets and soft lights. She walked slowly to room 406. She stood in front of the door. Then she raised her hand and knocked twice. There was no answer. She waited. The door opened slowly from the inside, and there he was, Baba Caro, sitting in a wheelchair, but different. Blessing froze at the door. She couldn't breathe. Her legs stopped moving. Her eyes stared like they had seen a ghost. The man sitting in the wheelchair looked like Baba Caro, but not exactly. His hair was shaved neatly. His face was smooth, clean. His kaftan had been replaced with a crisp white native outfit, the kind you see on TV during rich people's events. His fingernails were trimmed, his hands clean. His dark glasses now rested on the table beside him. And his eyes, they weren't white anymore. They were normal, with black pupils, rested, focused, alive. Blessing stepped back. "Wait, I don't understand. Baba Caro." The man gave her a small smile, a smile she had seen before, but only when he was hitting her akara silently before the rusted fence. "Yes, Blessing, it's me." She grabbed the wall to steady herself. Your eyes, you can see?" she asked, her voice trembling. The man nodded slowly. "Yes, I've always been able to see." Blessing's mouth dropped open. She looked around the hotel room. It was big, classy. There was a wine table, thick carpets, velvet curtains, and soft music playing low in the background. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Why did you pretend? Why did you sit at that bus stop every day like a blind man?" The man nodded gently, as if expecting the question. He gestured to a chair beside him for Blessing to sit down. But Blessing didn't sit immediately. She walked slowly to the chair, keeping her eyes on him like he could disappear if she blinked. She sat down. Her hands were on her lap, her bag still hugged close to her chest. He cleared his throat. "My real name is not Baba Caro," he began. Blessing frowned. "It's not?" "No. My name is Chief Obinna Carlson. I am a businessman, philanthropist, and the founder of Carlson Group, a private investment company based in Abuja and Port Harcourt. I own properties, schools, hospitals, farms, and a foundation that supports widows and orphans." Blessing blinked like she had dust in her eye. You own what?" Chief Obinna smiled. "I am what people call a billionaire." She gripped her chair and silence filled the room. Blessing stared at him. Her brain couldn't process it. Her mind was still stuck on the dusty brown kaftan, the broken stool, and the white blind eyes. The awkward silence at the bus stop. She shook her head. "No, this is a joke. Is this a prank?" Did you pay someone to do this? Are there cameras inside here right now to capture my reaction? He leaned back in his chair, still smiling softly. You see, Blessing, I've lived in wealth for years, but I got tired. I got tired of fake people, of employees who pretend, of friends who only show up when the camera is on, of people who smile at me because I have money, not because they care. His voice dropped. So 3 years ago, I started a project. I dressed like a blind beggar. Every 6 months, I change location. I sit quietly in public places. I don't talk. I don't beg. I just watch people. How they treat someone who looks worthless. Blessing stared at him. You mean you've been watching people all this time? Yes, he nodded. Some spit at me. Some kick my stool. Some laugh and call me mad. Some throw coins at my feet like I'm not a human being. But only a few, very few, have ever shown me real love. He leaned forward now. And you, Blessing, you did it every day. Without knowing who I was. Without expecting anything. You gave me food even when you didn't have enough. You smiled at me when others turned their faces. You even defended me when people mocked you for helping me. His voice became soft and emotional. I remember one morning, it was raining. You were shivering under your umbrella. You hadn't sold anything yet, but you still brought hot akara to me. You even added extra pieces. Blessing's throat tightened. Tears welled in her eyes, but she tried to hold them back. I didn't do it because I knew you were rich, she said quickly. I just didn't want you to go hungry. Obinna nodded. That's why you are here. That's why I invited you. He opened a drawer and pulled out a file. Then he brought out another brown envelope, this time a fat one. He placed them in front of her. Blessing looked at it, confused. What's this? He smiled. Open it. Her hand shook as she tore it open. Inside, there were several sheets of paper. The first one read, Certificate of Ownership, Sweet Joy Kitchen, Registered Business, Owner, Blessing Chigozie. Location, GRA, Phase 2, Port Harcourt. Estimated value, 72 million naira. She dropped the paper. What? What is this? Obinna's eyes were kind. I bought you a restaurant, a big one, in your name. It is fully registered, fully furnished, staffed, ready to run. And the best part, it's close to a school, so students and workers will buy daily. Blessing gasped. Her hands flew to her chest. But why? Why would you do this for me? He looked at her and said clearly, because kindness is a rare currency in this world, and when I see someone spend it freely, I must reward them. She couldn't hold it anymore. Tears burst from her eyes. She leaned forward and cried into her hands. The kind of cry that comes from deep inside. The cry of someone who has suffered long and suddenly found out that she matters. I'm just a poor girl. I never finished school. I don't even know how to run a restaurant. Obinna stood up from his chair, slowly, with strength. He walked over her and placed a hand on her shoulder. You won't run it alone. I've hired a manager. You'll be trained. You'll be mentored. You have a monthly salary. And you also get shares from the profits. Everything is in your name. She looked up at him, eyes wide open. You can walk? He nodded slowly. Yes, I can. I've always been able to. I only used the wheelchair to complete the disguise. Blessing's mouth opened again. All this time, she thought she was feeding the blind. She thought she was feeding a helpless beggar. She was feeding a millionaire in disguise. It didn't feel real. She stood up slowly, still shaking. Her legs felt like foam. Her mind was flying in every direction. What if I had ignored you? What if I had laughed like the others? He smiled. Then you would have lost this blessing. But that's why your name is Blessing. Because even in your lack, you gave. They sat for over 2 hours talking. He told her about the other people he had rewarded in different cities. A shoe shiner in Enugu who gave him a shed during rain. A conductor in Ibadan who offered his only bottle of water. A small girl in Jos who shared her biscuits. But you are the only one who fed me for 21 days straight. Blessing wiped her eyes again. She had never seen this day coming. She remembered sleeping hungry, selling akara in the rain, getting insulted by customers, being laughed at by those who thought she was just wasting her time. Now, the same girl had her own business. As she left the hotel that evening, escorted by a personal driver, with her envelope tucked in her bag, she looked up at the sky. It was pink and purple, the kind of sunset that looked like heaven painted it. She whispered softly, "Thank you, Baba Caro," or Chief Obinna. Then she smiled, because for the first time in her life, she wasn't just surviving, she was rising. The next morning, Blessing didn't wake up to fry akara. She didn't hear the usual rooster crow. She didn't carry a basin of beans on her head. She did not rush through the crowd at Rumokoro. That life, the one filled with struggle, heat, insults and little gains, was now behind her. She was now Blessing Chigozie, CEO of Sweet Joy Kitchen. But it still hadn't sunk in. She stood in front of her mirror in the one-room house she used to call home and touched her dress gently. It was new, bought for her by one of Chief Obinna's staff the day before. It fitted her body perfectly, and for once in her life, she didn't feel like a poor market girl. She felt like a boss. She stared at herself. She whispered, "Is this really me?" Her eyes became misty again. There was a knock at her door. She opened it and a black SUV was parked outside, the same one that picked her up from the hotel the day before. The driver stepped out and bowed. "Good morning, ma. I'm here to take you to your restaurant." She looked around her street. The neighbor's children stood at a distance, staring at the car with wide eyes. Her old landlady peeked through her window. Blessing tried to greet them, but her voice shook. She simply nodded and entered the car. As they drove through the streets of Port Harcourt, people stared. A girl who used to fry akara under a torn umbrella now sat in a tinted car, escorted like a governor's daughter. But she didn't smile with pride. She held her bag on her lap and whispered prayers the entire way. "Lord, let me not disappoint you. Lord, let me help others. Help me to help others. Lord, thank you." 30 minutes later, the car slowed down and turned into a quiet, beautiful road. Blessing leaned forward and gasped. There it was, a stunning white building with tall glass windows and flower pots on both sides of the entrance. The signboard above the building read in bold gold letters, "Sweet Joy Kitchen, home of the best African meals." Her hands flew to her mouth. She stepped out of the car slowly. The air smelled like fresh paint and expensive food. 2 security men stood at the gate and quickly bowed. "Welcome, madam." She blinked. "Madam?" The driver smiled. "You are the boss now, ma." As she walked through the main door, a smell of fresh towels, baked bread and new leather filled her nose. Everything was shiny, clean and beautiful. There were glass tables, sparkling floors and flowers in every corner. Waiters dressed in white uniform moved gently, smiling, rehearsing their steps. One of the men, the manager, walked up to her quickly. "Good morning, madam. We've been expecting you." She nodded slowly, still dazed. "This way, please," he said, leading her to her office upstairs. As she climbed the stairs, her heart beat faster. They reached the door. It had a bold label, CEO, Blessing Chigozie. She froze. Her name was on the door, not someone else's, not a dream or imagination. Her real name, printed in gold, in a font that looked like royalty. She turned the handle and stepped inside. Her office was big. There was a shiny desk, a soft leather chair, a computer, a bookshelf, a large glass window that looked down at the restaurant below. A portrait of her, yes, her, smiling in her yellow dress, hung on the wall. Blessing burst into tears. The manager stood quietly and waited. She touched the decks. She sat gently on the chair. She touched the nameplate on the table. CEO, Blessing C. Am I really awake? She asked softly. Yes, madam, the manager said. And we are ready to serve under your leadership. The next few hours went like magic. She was shown the kitchen, clean, professional, with chefs already cooking mouth-watering dishes. She saw the freezers, the storage room, the staff canteen. She was introduced to the team, cooks, waiters, cashiers, janitors, even a female assistant manager. They all clapped when they met her. Welcome, madam. We are proud to work with you. One woman, the head cook, hugged her quietly and whispered, I used to buy akara from you near the bus stop. I'm so happy for you. Blessing smiled through tears. So many emotions, so many memories. Later that day, the manager walked into her office and placed a blue file on her desk. Your first week's salary, madam, already processed. It's 600,000 naira. She gasped. What? Yes, plus allowance and director's share. It will increase monthly. Blessing's hand shook as she opened the file and saw the bank alert printed inside. 600,000 naira. She used to sell 50 naira akara. Now her signature was required to approve salaries. She bowed her head and wept again. That night, she didn't go back to her old zinc room. Chief Obinna had arranged a 2-bedroom apartment for her, not far from the restaurant. Clean, tiled, painted and furnished. She walked into the new house barefoot, touching every chair, every wall. She fell to her knees and cried for a long time. God, why me? I'm not even qualified. I don't know how to speak big grammar. I didn't go to university. I'm just a street girl. But deep in her heart, she heard the answer. You were kind, you were faithful, and you gave when you had nothing, and that is enough. 2 weeks later, Sweet Joy Kitchen opened officially. Chief Obinna was there. He stood beside Blessing and cut the ribbons. People came in large numbers. Students, workers, church members, bloggers, even a local TV station. Everyone wanted to see the Akara girl who became a CEO overnight. And Blessing, she wore a gold dress. Her hair was neatly packed. Her nails were done. Her shoes were clean. But her smile, it was still the same, humble and full of heart. During the lunch, she gave a short speech. This restaurant is not just a business, it's a testimony. I didn't start with money. I started with kindness. I was just a girl frying akara by the roadside. But one day, I helped a man who I thought was a blind beggar. I didn't know he was a billionaire. Today, he has changed my life. So if you're hearing me now, never stop doing good, even when no one sees you, because God sees you. The crowd clapped. Some cried. Chief Obinna wiped a tear from his eye. He walked to her and said, I'm proud of you, and this is just the beginning. That evening, as the sun went down, Blessing stood alone by the restaurant window, looking out of the world. She remembered Mama Peace. She remembered the cobbler. She remembered all the insults, hunger, the burnt akara. But most of all, she remembered Baba Caro, the blind man who wasn't blind, who watched quietly, who waited patiently, and who gave her the life she never dreamed of. Blessing sat in her office one quiet morning. The sun had just risen. A soft orange light spilled through the wide glass window behind her desk. She had just finished signing salary slips and reviewing the restaurant's weekly reports. Her assistant stood waiting near the door, holding a new package from a local vendor. Everything was perfect, too perfect, and that was what troubled her. She looked around the large office. The smooth table, the wall clock, the glass-framed photo of her smiling in her yellow CEO dress, the clean tiles under her feet, and yet her mind wandered back to that small rusty umbrella, back to that noisy bus stop, back to that old frying pan that made music whenever akara dropped in hot oil, and most of all, back to the stool by the fence where a quiet blind man once sat. She turned her chair away from the window and whispered, "God, you didn't bless me so I can forget where I came from." She stood up. That evening, while her staff packed up for the day, Blessing called her manager. "Sir, I want to start something new." The man looked surprised. "New?" "Yes, a foundation, something small. I want to give free food to the hungry every week." The manager blinked. "Like a charity?" "Yes," she said, nodding with quiet confidence. "I want to go back to the streets, to the ones I left behind. Some of them are just one plate of food away from giving up on life." The manager swallowed hard. Then he smiled. "I'll help you set it up, madam." Within 2 weeks, Blessing launched her new project, Blessing's Basket, Feeding the Forgotten. Every Friday, a clean white food van left her restaurant, packed with trays of steaming jollof rice, akara, moi moi, bread and clean water. Staff volunteers joined her, cooks, waiters, even cleaners, all ready to serve. The van would stop under bridges, by busy roundabouts, near hospitals and around market corners, wherever people slept on carton boxes, wherever barefoot children chased flies up their lips, wherever hawkers cried from hunger while pretending to smile. Blessing's Basket arrived. One Friday afternoon, a team stopped near an old bus stop where a row of beggars sat on mats. Blessing stepped down herself. She wore a simple gown and slippers with no makeup or jewelry, just a smile, the same one that gave Baba Kalu peace all those months ago. She walked from person to person, handing out food with her own hands. "Eat well, uncle. Take this, mama, you're not forgotten. Here, my dear child, God sees you." Some hugged her feet, some prayed for her. One old man with no teeth said, "You must be an angel." Blessing laughed. "No, sir, I was once like you." Back at the restaurant, her staff watched her grow, not just in wealth, but in wisdom. She trained young girls who couldn't afford school fees. She started a small kitchen program for widows who had lost everything. She visited public schools and gave motivational talks. Sometimes, she even returned quietly to her old street, not to show off, but to buy akara from the same women who used to ignore her before. And each time she did, they would whisper, "Is this the same Blessing? See how her life has changed." But one visit touched her deeply. She returned to her old street one early Saturday morning. The sun hadn't even risen properly. She wore a long scarf to cover her hair and a simple wrapper. She walked to the very spot where she used to sell akara. The rusted fence was still there, but the low stool where Papa Carlo used to sit was gone. She walked closer and knelt there for a minute. Tears filled her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered to the wind. "You were never just a beggar. You were my blessing in disguise." As she stood up, a young girl selling oranges beside the fence called out, "Auntie, are you the one they say is Blessing?" She turned slowly. "Yes." The girl nodded. "My mommy used to say if God will ever visit someone, he will come as a poor man." Blessing smiled. "Your mommy is right." She walked away quietly, but in her heart, the words burned like gold. 3 months later, during the city's Businesswoman of the Year awards, Blessing was called to the stage. Her story had spread. Local TV, social media, even newspapers. The girl who fed a blind beggar who turned out to be a billionaire and rewarded her with an empire, who didn't keep it to herself. She stood on the stage that night in a beautiful golden gown. The light shined on her face. People clapped loudly, but when it was time to speak, she didn't hold the award high. She simply said, "This is not my trophy. The real winner is the me who didn't give up. The me who sold akara in the sun. The one who gave food to someone others called useless. If that version of me didn't have a kind heart, you would not see this one standing here today. So I dedicate this award to every kind soul who is still struggling. Your day will come. Just don't stop doing good." The hall stood in applause. Many cried. Some wept. Others went home and gave food to strangers for the first time in years. As Blessing left the event that day, her driver opened the car door for her. But before she entered, she looked up at the sky. The stars were bright. The moon was full. A cold wind blew across her face. She closed her eyes and whispered, "I didn't keep it to myself. I gave because I was given." And somewhere in the heart of the city, on a quiet porch, Chief Obinna Carlson watched her speech replayed on TV. He smiled and whispered to himself, "She passed the test." The moral lesson of this story reminds us that kindness is not weakness. It is a seed that grows in silence, and one day it blooms into a miracle.